Hey, and welcome to Industry Night with me, Nycci Nellis, the show that takes you on the deep dive of what's happening in the food, wine, and hospitality scene. Now, normally I'm talking to you live from the Wine Lair, which is a gorgeous private wine club in downtown DC. But today I'm someplace different. I am at the Wells. You can't really see because all I got is a curtain behind me. But the Wells is a part of Hollis Wells Silverman's empire. She's got the Duck and the Peach. She's got the Wells, which is this fabulous bar. And then she's got La Colline. So 3 incredible properties in one space. And we're here today because Napa Valley Vintners are in town. So Napa Valley Vintners is an association of the over 500 members of winemakers and vineyards out in Napa Valley. They are here specifically to pour for the trade. That's why they're here today. They're also pouring all around the city. So if you're lucky enough, you're invited to one of those wine dinners. I am. But also they're marching their little tushies up to the hill because there are some amazing, important things that need to be discussed. And that is why they are here today. But before I bring on today's guests, let me tell you a little bit about where I've been. So Oyster. For those of you who don't know, it is one of the best restaurants in the city, one of the few restaurants that is plant-based dining only. It is a tasting menu, and they are doing incredible things. Rob Ruba and his team really know how to present plant-based food in a way that is different in a casual setting, especially for a tasting menu. And I might add, there is oyster. That's why it's called Oyster. The whole deal with Rob is everything is plant-based but the oyster, because oysters are natural aquifers. So it's all good for the environment. Also, natural wine fans, they got your number. Okay. Also, another James Beard nominee, Costa. I've talked about it before. I never did the tasting menu before. I was upstairs in Amazonia. This is a Peruvian tasting experience by Chef Carlos Delgado. It is outrageous, and there is lots of amazing food, a very heavy fish focus. So a whole sushi component is included. Also, he's doing these full fish, a whole bunch of different kinds, a lot of fish that I've never heard of, all out of Peru. What I'm finding really interesting is that it's really, really expensive. The tasting menu is actually not that expensive, but if you decide to order the whole fish is really expensive, like 200 plus, sometimes 300 plus, also a 400 plus, which is a lot of money for a whole fish. Now, the fish is fantastic, but I am going to bring Chef Delgado on at some point to talk about why that fish is so expensive. So if you haven't had a chance to go to Casa, I definitely recommend checking it out, or go upstairs to Amazonia, where the bar is putting out amazing cocktails and the food is amazing. Everybody's talking about Little Vietnam. I did go. It's in the old Himitsu space. Really tasty Vietnamese cuisine, obviously. Something to check out is the Bon Zo, which is a turmeric crepe made with coconut milk and rice flour. It is gluten-free, but it's the filling. It's filled with shrimp and pork and bean sprouts and mung beans, and it is so delicious. So you definitely want to check that out. Lastly, Baked and Wired, 22 years. If you ever go to Georgetown, you see a bunch of people standing online for stupid Georgetown cupcake. Walk away. You should be moving down to Baked and Wired, some of the best baked goods in the city. Pro tip, get the bee sting. It's my favorite. Okay, now on to today's show. So if you've been tuning in for over the last 7 years, I have had the pleasure of talking to winemakers from the Napa Valley region. And that is because of my relationship with Napa Valley Vintner. They come here every year, except for the last 3 because of COVID. And they bring in a bunch of winemakers, as I explained, to go up on the hill and explain their priorities, what's happening for them. So now during the pandemic, I was really lucky because I was able to do a couple of shows with them where we were able to talk about how the pandemic was hitting them. But now they're back. They're back in town for the first time in 3 years. They're pouring for the trade. They're pouring all over town, and they're going up on the hill to talk about their priorities. So Here with me today is Teresa Wall. She is Senior Director of Communications at Napa Valley Vintners. Emma Swain. She is CEO of St. Superi Estate, Vineyards and Winery. And Jamie Arrojo, who is the Director of Connections and Strategy at Tuana. So I'm so excited for you to sit back, relax, grab a glass of wine, and tune into our conversation. And now on to today's show. So for those of you who've been tuning into me for the last 7 years, yes, this show has been on air for 7 years, you have heard me over the years talk to the Napa Valley Vintners. Now that is an association that takes care of all the members of wineries and vineyards in Napa County. Now I have Teresa Wall with me today. She is going to explain exactly what that means. But our talks in the past were so different because they were all pre-COVID. And we were talking about very different priorities 5 years ago, 7 years ago. And now today, things have changed greatly. And I'm so excited because I also have Emma Swain with me, who is the CEO of St. Superi Estates, Vineyards and Winery, and also Jamie Arrojo, who is the Director of Connection and Strategy. And I'm going to try to say this correctly because my French sucks. Tuana.
Very good.
Am I close? All right, good. So I'm so excited you all are here because between sustainability, climate change, forest fires, COVID, there is so much that the wine world has had to deal with. Teresa, I'd love to start with you. Can we give everybody just a little 411 on Napa Valley Vintners, who you are, what you do, and what you do for your members?
Sure. Thanks for having us here today, Nycci. Napa Valley Vintners, we are one of the most successful wine trade associations in the world. We have more than 550 members. And when you hear that number, you might think, wow, that's quite astounding that Napa Valley, such a small region, has so many members. What is interesting about that is that 78% of our members make less than 10,000 cases. And so what that tells you is that the majority of Napa Valley is made up of really small producers, and 95% of those producers are family owned. And so as an organization, our role is to not only promote the region and our wineries, but also to put in place protections so that the future of the Napa Valley will hopefully look much like it does today. And so that really encompasses the majority of our work, to promote, protect, and enhance our region for generations to come.
Well, for those who maybe don't, there's sort of this, especially us East Coasters, we think of Napa as just this region that's all wine country in California. Can you give us a complete understanding of what the region is, what it encompasses?
It's actually a really small region. So our name is quite big, the most recognizable name in the United States, in the world of wine, very recognizable. And so oftentimes because of that big name impact, people think that we're a very large region. And in fact, we're a really small region. We produce only 4% of all California wine. And our name precedes us. And so there's a misconception about the size of the Napa Valley. So because we're a very small community, I would say that our vintners are extremely connected. And that's one of the great mechanisms that we bring to the industry, is bringing our vintners together and creating this really nice tight-knit community of folks who work together to achieve more in Napa Valley.
And on that note of community, I know you guys are, all of you, on all of your websites, you all talk about community and focus as a part of your focus for what you do. Can we talk about sort of the mission, like Napa Green, all the different things that you all do and how that is affected among the wineries?
I think to sum it all up, it's about leadership. And in Napa Valley, we are leaders on many different fronts: environmental, workforce, we attract leaders, we attract innovators to our valley, and that's really what it's all about. And that's it was founded by folks who went out in the world and wanted to make a name for our region, and that's exactly what they did. And that was through their leadership. And I think that spirit is really continued today. And again, I think that word community, you do see it a lot because it's a really it's a true passion and a true value that we have in our community, is working together to achieve more.
And just lastly, before we get into these two, can we talk about Napa Green and what it is?
Yeah, well, I think that you've got a great panel of folks who can tell you all about Napa Green. So from the very high level,
yes,
I can say that in the early 2000s, we partnered with several organizations to create a sustainability program that would go above and beyond, because that's what we do. And it was, in the beginning, it was very tailored. The focus was to be tailored to the individual site to make sure that there was a plan that worked to achieve a winery's to make a winery as sustainable as it could be, that was very individualized. And over the course of time, the program has developed and changed, as it should, because nothing should stand still. And if it does, then it's not a very good program. Right. So Napa Green is about evolving, and that's what the Napa Green program is today. It's focused on climate action. It's focused on regenerative farming, and it's focused on social responsibility. And so,
I feel like ding, 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 all the things that we need to talk about.
All the tenets that we should be talking about in today's world. And so it's a really great program that encompasses all of those things.
Right. Okay. On that note, I mean, at the end, we'll talk about actually why you are all here today. So Emma Swain, so nice to meet you. Thank you so
nice
much
to meet you, Nycci,
for joining in. I think the only mistake we have right now is that none of us have wine in front of us. We should fix that next time around.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about how you wound up in the wine world.
Well, I went to school at a wine school, UC Davis, and so I really wanted to go into wine, and I thought there can't possibly be any money in wine, so I went into public accounting. But then I was pulled to wine, and I ended up starting in the wine business 30 years ago, working for the Coppola family.
And who knew that your accounting skills would be so necessary as a CEO, correct?
It's always handy to have a good financial background.
Right. Okay, so, but let's just talk a little bit about how you went from just working in wine to being the head of a winery and what that means and what that, entails.
So I started as a controller for the Coppola family, and I helped them purchase the Inglenook property back in the early 90s. And
I just want to tell you that growing up when I was really young, there was a big jug of Inglenook in my parents' fridge. I don't think they ever drank it. It was like in the back of the fridge. Anyway,
somebody brought it over.
Somebody brought it over at some point. It's like one of those memories that you just pull out.
Well, it was a spectacular property, and grows some really great Cabernet Sauvignon there in Rutherford. Beautiful place. And so I ended up working on that project, and then I got recruited to work for the Sebastiani family. And at the time, they were an 8 million case winery, and I was the chief operating officer there after we sold part of it. So I was there for 13 years and then came over to St. Subery.
And let's talk about a little bit about the winery. I mean, it's obviously a very well-known winery, but for those who maybe haven't had the pleasure, can we talk about the kinds of wines you're doing and just how it works on the winery?
Absolutely. So I think the one thing that we have in common with Napa Green is every year we try to make things better. And that's really consistent at St. Subery. We focus on Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon and Red Bordeaux varietals. And we grow all of our fruit ourselves. And so that gives us great control over the vineyard. And we're able to every year taste wine, taste and compare the notes to what we did in the vineyard, and make sure that we're making adjustments. Each year we can tweak things a little bit more, improve our practices, both from a sustainability perspective and from a quality perspective.
Well, so for you, what does sustainability mean? What does that look like on a vineyard your size?
So we have almost 1,600 acres in Napa Valley, and almost 550 plus acres of vineyard. And so for me, it's about ensuring we're growing with great quality. We're paying attention to the water usage. We're making things better every year. And we have a healthy vineyard, healthy soils, and that the vineyard 20 years from now is in a better state than it is today.
Well, so Teresa mentioned regenerative. I don't know if a lot of people really know what that means and how it applies to what you're doing to the vines or on the land?
Right. So we really are avoiding tilling. We're avoiding herbicides. We're using sheep. We just had 700 ewes out for several months doing 2 passes. They just eat the cover crops, rapidly compost that back into the soil, and they work really hard, round the clock practically.
Wow.
They do get breaks and they work hard. And then we have 2.
They don't nibble. Do they go for the grapes or the leaves at all?
So-
do you get a rogue? Is there any rogues out there?
We have to move them out once we have bud break. And we do use them to manage the hillsides as well. And we've had cows most years. We have cows grazing the hillsides as well to keep the grasses down and to, allow that grazing to happen. But we encourage the biodiversity. I mean, California is the most biodiverse state. Right. And where we are in Napa Valley, it's like a hotspot of biodiversity. If you think of biodiversity being red in the United States, we're just radiating out this dark red, and you go across the country and it would be completely white until you sort of hit Tennessee and the Everglades. I mean, we're in a really cool location. We have wildflowers where we are that aren't seen anywhere else in Northern California. We have the National Audubon Society bird count every January 1 on our property, and in a 24-hour period they can find 75 to 100 different species.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Just of birds in the dead of the winter. So it's really a remarkable place. And so we want to encourage that. And that biodiversity enables us to farm in a way that we're working with the current system, right? We encourage bluebirds. We have hundreds of bluebird boxes. They eat leafhoppers. And so, we're working with that natural order and trying to encourage it as much as possible, because nature will balance itself.
Sure. And for those who don't know about Rutherford dust, do you want to tell us what that is?
Sure. I mean, for me, Rutherford dust is the texture, the tannins, that really, really fine-grained tannin that's like silk and elegance on the palate.
And that comes through in the wine.
It totally comes through in the wine.
Just what kind of wines are we tasting here today?
So today we're tasting our mountain wines from our Dollarhide vineyard. One is our Dollarhide Cabernet Sauvignon. It's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon from a vineyard parcel that was planted in 1983. And great old vine, great structure, but also a lot of layers of flavor. The parcel is an undulating hillside, and we pick it multiple times during the harvest season. And we ferment it in concrete and in oak uprights. We do a whole berry barrel fermentation as well in small French oak barrels, and then some in stainless steel. So here it is. It's a single parcel Cabernet Sauvignon, 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, but it could have 30 lots in it when we do the final blend. And it's just got layers of texture. It's a really well-structured wine, very bold, but also very fresh. We ferment all of our wines dry, and it's got this bright freshness, except the Moscato, which we intentionally leave a little sugar.
There's a reason for that, right? There's a total reason for that. Okay, when we get back, when we all get together, I want to talk about water, because you mentioned it.
Absolutely.
And energy and what that looks like. But I wanted to get to you. Hi. Hi, Jamie. Oh, there we go. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the mic switch.
Hi, Nycci. So nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
Here too. So tell us a little bit about you and your ascent into the wine business.
Ascent, descent. No, ascent.
Right. Yes,
ascent.
ascent.
Ascent, obviously.
Right. One stage to another.
Yeah, no, my name's Jamie Arajo, and my family's actually been in the wine business in Napa Valley since about 1990.
Okay.
My parents had a property that they bought, and they were making some beautiful Cabernets and Sauvignon Blancs for many, many years. I was actually living in Europe at the time, doing all kinds of other things, and eventually,
come on, give us an example.
So I was in academia for a while. I was an actor in London for a little while, and then fell into a really wonderful spot at a company that made champagne and cognac, which is kind of a lovely way to start.
But not in London.
In London.
Okay.
Absolutely. They promoted me and moved me to Paris. So I ended up in France, and then went back, got my MBA, and started my own company doing marketing and strategy specifically for the wine industry. And in fact, one of my first and best clients was the Napa Valley Vintners, believe it or not. So
I
totally used to be
believe
a
that.
vendor. I used to be a vendor back in the day. Then When my parents sold their previous property and started a new project, I had an opportunity to move back to the US and become a partner in that, and also to found my own wine brand, Trois Noirs, which is what I have here today.
Right. Three nuts.
Three nuts.
Who are the three nuts?
Exactly. Originally, it was sort of a nod to the next generation of my family, but really today we're very focused on our kind of three guiding principles of community, possibility, and opportunity.
And what does that actually mean?
That actually means that we are as focused on running our business as a force for good in the community as we are making really delicious wines.
Well, so what kind of wines are you making and how are you going about it? Because I know you're into biodynamic.
We do have some biodynamic and organic vineyards, and we also have some that we're working to actually bring them into regenerative farming, which is really exciting and wonderful as a partnership with our growers. At Trois Noirs, we make several different wines. We have a tiny little lot of rosé. We do a couple of vineyard designated.
I can't believe you didn't bring me rosé. Go ahead.
We only make 80 cases,
Okay,
so
seriously?
it's usually club members only.
Okay.
But yeah, we make a couple of Sauvignon Blancs. A Chardonnay, which we have here today, our red blend, Noisette Cuvée, 2 vineyard designated Cabernets, a Merlot, and a Cab Franc coming out later this year.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yes.
And so how do you use organic or biodynamic? How are you using those sort of features in your wines?
My family has always been very dedicated to organic and biodynamic farming. My family were the very first biodynamic certified producer in Napa Valley.
Okay, for those who
Believe it
don't
or
know,
not.
I mean, I know what biodynamic is, but can we
Yes.
just give a little tutorial on it?
Okay.
Because a lot of people think it's like voodoo.
Yes.
And, I think it's funky.
There's an argument to be made.
It's
but,
interesting. I think it's super interesting.
It is. The way I usually describe it to people, because, if you want to go into the actual ins and outs of it, it's War and Peace. I mean, there's tomes and tomes. I always say it's a little bit like traditional Chinese medicine for vines or for agriculture.
I like that description too.
And really, I think everybody after the last few years can understand the concept of when you are healthier, you're more resistant to whatever comes along, whether it's stress or disease. And our vineyards are no different. So I think that biodynamics is certainly very important. I would say for us at Trois Noirs, equally important is the social justice aspect of what we do.
Okay.
There's no environmental justice without social justice. It's something that we believe in very strongly.
And so what does that look like for you?
That looks like creating and supporting a really wonderful, diverse team. It looks like being very intentional about how we share our wines, where we share our wines, and the kind of communities that we actually specifically are working with. And it also means going up and down the chain of everything that we do and making sure that people are making a living wage, making sure that, everyone who's involved in our brand, from vendors to the winery to the vineyard, are actually being looked after and thought about and taken care of.
Which is so important. And
Huge.
With that, I want to open it up because we're 4 women, but I'm a voyeur of the wine biz and an enjoyer of the wine biz, but not in the wine biz. But here I have 3 women who are leaders in the wine industry. And Teresa, I want to take it back to what you were talking about earlier. Or we can go to Napa Green, or we can talk about fire mitigation. I mean, there's so many top issues right now that you're all dealing with. It's one of the reasons that you're here today. So let's talk about why, other than for this beautiful trade event and all the tastings that are happening around the city right now, what is the main reason for bringing all these winemakers and people here today?
So the impetus of coming to DC is to meet with members of Congress to let them know about some of the challenges that we face in the wine industry and how they can help and support what we are doing. California is the 4th largest producer of wine in the world. And I think people don't really recognize that. It's an extremely important industry here in the United States. And if we don't come and let them know what we're doing in the industry, how important this industry is to people, and the challenges we face, then we can't get the assistance we need. And so that's what we're here to do. We have a team of vintners who are leaders in our industry who are going to be meeting with members of Congress over the course of 2 days. It's kind of like a quick run of show. They're going to be running all around, meeting with people, and hopefully make an impact. And so that's really the impetus of why we're here. And then, of course, while we're here, we get to do the fun things in the wine industry, which is meet all the incredible people who live and work here in Washington, D.C., and the Metroplex area, and share some of our beautiful wines with the amazing people who work in the wine industry. I don't know anyone who works in the wine industry who came to it because they thought they were going to get really far in life. I think everyone came into the wine industry with a passion, and they were drawn to it probably first because of the product and second because of the people.
Sure.
And so we're very fortunate to be here to meet folks in the Washington, D.C. area and share our product.
Well,
And I
yes,
would just,
go ahead.
and I just say there's one thing that I think, because the Napa Valley Vintners are truly amazing. And, you know, I think Teresa's been very humble about it, but it is really the preeminent association of wine growers and wineries pretty much in the world. And the work that they do is absolutely extraordinary. And one of the really great things that they do for us as wineries is give us the chance to really build and create community together. I mean, we are a teeny tiny valley. We're very small towns. Like, you can't help but know everyone because we just live very close to each other.
Right.
But being able to come with all of these wineries, and maybe there's some people you haven't met before, and now you're in DC and you can have a drink or you can go to dinner, you can actually get to know them in a way that you might not otherwise do. I think it's an incredible opportunity that the vintners provide, and they do trips all over the country and all over the world for collections of vintners. And it's a beautiful way in which we can build our community too, which is nice.
Well, I love hearing that. Here, we'll switch for a second, because those getting out of town is so important sometimes, to get away, to talk with other people that maybe you don't get to talk to all the time. But since you are in DC and we are on Capitol Hill and you are going up to the Hill, you know, Emma, tell me about some of the things that are real priorities for you and the winery.
So for our discussion on the Hill,
Yes.
really to help with fire mitigation, we've contributed. We raised an extra $2.1 million this fall to work to be fire safe. And it's super important to be prepared and to be leaders, not to just say, hey, we've had this disaster. And
Twice. 2017, 2020, right? You've had it twice.
Yeah, at 2020, there were 1,400 fires started that night across the state. It was really quite remarkable. But we did have it twice, and we've been working to not have it again ever since the first one, and really focusing, and groups of vintners and community members working together to set up neighborhoods to work together to clear and to work with the community, with the state, with the city, with the county, with public and private interest to do our best to not have this sort of disaster again, and to make sure we have access in the case of a disaster to the hospital, to the roads, to the people to get out safely and to be safe.
Which is as much of a priority as anything else, right?
Absolutely.
You have to take care of the community first and foremost.
Absolutely. It's the number one priority.
Right.
Yes.
So we got fire mitigation, and that goes hand in hand really with the resiliency, right? Because it sounds like
Absolutely.
you're putting these plans in place. I would assume everybody is on board with these initiatives. Like when you talk about climate action, like it's a lot of you have a lot of members. I know it's a small area, but you have a lot of members. Is there dissent among the group, or is most people like, yes, this is what we need to do in order to thrive and survive?
I think we're all farmers and we all live by Mother Nature. And so in our industry, we need to be committed to the environment, and we are. And I think we've been leaders in that, and we continue to be in the community. We have even Napa Green is being rolled out to our hotels right now in Napa Valley, and setting up an original certification, not just wineries, vineyards, but our businesses.
But so we haven't really addressed what Napa Green looks like. Like, what does Napa Green look like for you?
For For me, it's
And then you're
all about continuous improvement, right? So Napa Green in the vineyard is about having the sheep there. It's about all of our different practices. We meet those requirements or exceed them. And then we're inspected by federal, state, and local agencies. And then every 3 years, we have to meet new goals that are specific to that property, whether it's how much water we're using, whether it's reducing the amount of tillage, the type of cover crops, the composting that we're using. We sequestered an extra 1,600 tons of carbon last year in our vineyards. I mean, so we're really focusing on all of those measurements. And that's part of what Napa Green brings to it, is how we measure it and then we improve it. And everything we do is like that. And it's the same thing in the vineyard. When we started, we had no solar energy. We were not using the right type of light bulbs. I mean, we had to make a lot of changes to make the first certification, but we got the winery certified in 2012.
Wow.
And we've been recertified every 3 years. 94% of our power at the winery we generate is self-generated. And it's going to be 100 this year. Darn it. I'm just
You're
going to be 100.
Is it all solar, wind?
all
What are you
solar.
using? Okay.
It's all solar.
Incredible.
We recycle all of our water at the winery. We recompost out back into the vineyard all of our wine waste solids. We grow produce. We grow our own grapes. We encourage that biodiversity. I can look out my office window and see 15 different birds just in front of me for 15 different species. And I hear frogs croaking outside my window. So you know that you're farming sustainably when you're hearing the frogs.
Right. I love that. And what about for you?
Yeah, I mean, Napa Green, the wonderful thing about it is that, it's based around these different pillars. So whether it's pesticide use, waste reduction, electricity, water, social justice, and DEI. And they've really created a certification that's very complete, but it's also accessible for smaller wineries.
Right.
So
Because that's what I have here, right? Which I love. I love being able to hear both stories.
Exactly.
And that it works for both.
Completely. And it was interesting because we got certified as a B Corporation just over a year ago. And that is a very complete sort of cross-industry certification that looks at all of the different bits of our business. And we still felt it was important to get certified Napa Green as well. The good news is once we got certified as a B Corp, it was actually super easy because we were doing a bunch of things. But I think, to Emma's point, I do think that once you're working within these areas and these certifications, one of the great benefits is that it gives you good questions to ask when you're coming up against new decisions, whether it's a new way to treat a vineyard or a new vendor to bring along or a new initiative to roll out. You actually have good questions to ask yourself about, is this something that is going to be sustainable and work towards sustainability for the long haul?
Well, what's most interesting about what we're talking about today is that sustainability is also equals dollars. I think you find when you talk about maybe the car industry or some other industries, they're like, yeah, I mean, eventually, but not right now. But here, every step you make in the sustainability, in taking care of the environment, it means more money at the end of the day for the business and the growth of the business.
I mean, I think financial sustainability is super important. And it's also really important sometimes for us to balance financial outflows with long-term inflows. And I think it's something that's really hard for other industries to understand. We in the wine business are a very long horizon business. So if you think about, you plant a grapevine, you're not going to get any grapes off of that for 3 to 5 years just to begin with.
Right.
And then once you do, you're really not going to get something that's super, super, super fabulous and, where the vines are really expressing their entire personality for probably 10, 15 years. Then once you've actually harvested those.
How long does that product take?
Exactly. So once you've actually harvested them, okay, maybe if it's white wine, you can get something in 6 to 12 months. But, for a lot of our Napa cabs, it's a 2 to 3 year horizon. So you're looking at easily 10 years between planting and being in the market with a wine. So we're thinking yes, we have to think about the next quarter and the next term and the next
Everybody
year.
does, right.
But really, a lot of time, and I see Emma nodding because as a CEO,
right,
we are trying to look 10 to 20 years in the future and say, okay, what should we be doing now to ensure that we will still be relevant and sustainable then? And I think that's a really, it's a challenge, but it's such a gift when you're talking about some of these issues.
Well, crystal balls are tough, right?
They're very tough. And one of the things that, when we look at when we're planting a vineyard, we're like, oh, well, we're going to have to delay and we won't plant for another year because we need to do X, Y, and Z to make it perfect. Because I don't want the person 30 years from now to say, Emma, why did you do this? Why did you and Michael do this? Because I'm not going to be there when that vineyard's at its prime, right? And I need to be planting for the next generation.
Best practices, right?
Absolutely.
And new practices too.
Right. Which, I mean, I assume new ones are coming up
all the time.
all the time.
Well, and this is something I think also people don't realize. Wine is not about having a recipe that you follow. It's every single year Mother Nature gives us new things, some really lovely, some quite challenging. And it's all about how we take those and do the best we can with what we've been given. So every single year, again, I was talking about this before, we're constantly thinking about, all right, how can we innovate? What can we do? What are the little experiments we can try to see if this will work or that will work? Sometimes those things work and sometimes they don't. The research and development is actually, yes, we're agricultural. Yes, we're a very old school kind of business, but we're also really on the cutting edge with a lot of things. And I think the vintners are very good also on the educational side of helping us really push that envelope. UC Davis, obviously, Emma's alma mater, is also really a wonderful resource for us in that way.
Well, it just sounds like innovation is a huge part of everything with the wine world.
Everything.
Which is only interesting because I don't think the layperson really knows how important innovation is. You think about like some farmer and walking through the vines, do you know what I mean? Picking the grapes.
With a PhD in viticulture.
Right, exactly. Or the massive technology that's involved with the creation of the wine. I know you both have to get going. So just quickly, can we talk a little bit about name protection? What that means for all of you, because I know that it's very, very important. In Italy, they have DOCG. I mean, there's ways to confirm champagne. We all know champagne is only champagne and not sparkling. So how does that work for you all?
Name protection is a huge issue, and not only do we advocate for Napa name protection rights, we advocate for name protection rights of all regions around the world, especially here in the U.S. And so when we're here to let members of Congress know that there are issues that take place with regional names, we're speaking on behalf of the entire industry. Wine place, I think anyone who's in the industry agrees that that's the single most important aspect of your wine growing region is your specific place. And so we were the first region to get geographic indication status, shortened to GI status in the European Union. Outside of the European Union, we were the first to get GI status in China. And most recently, the 27th country that we have earned geographic indication status in is Vietnam. And what it means to have GI status is that you then have the rights in that country to protect your own name. And so we advocate both here in the United States as well as all around the world. And we are part of a founding group of regions who have banded together to work on this and come up with solutions around the world. And that is the Wine Origins Alliance.
That's, I don't think people realize how important it is.
Yeah.
To know where your wine is from, to understand. I mean, we never talked about terroir or anything like that today, but it's so important. You don't want your name bastardized.
Well, and it's an important part of the label. I mean, I think one of the most important things that you can look at on a label is the back label. And where the wine came from, how it was made, and the level of control that the government puts on what you can put on that label is super important. And making sure that that is respected around the world is essential to having a quality and authentic wine.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I would also just say that I think it's super important for our consumers that when they see Napa on a label, they can trust that it not only came from Napa, but a certain number of, percentage of the grapes were exactly from this place, made in this way. And even more today than ever, younger consumers particularly are, I think we've all become very skeptical consumers with good reason. And so being able to give people that confidence is very important.
Well, there's also a more educated consumer out there,
100%.
right? I mean, especially in the wine world, if you go back 30 years, what people knew, I think collectively compared to today. Okay. I know you're all so busy. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining me. Very quickly, will you tell everybody where they can find you, find your wine, whether Instagram, online? What would you like to tell us?
Absolutely. You can always find us on the socials at Trois Noirs Wine. And we
will have the spelling in the show notes.
No worries. And troisnoirswine.com. We sell all of our wines direct to consumer, and you can find them all there.
Excellent. What are you drinking right now?
Right now, actually, I'm really looking forward to having a glass of Chardonnay or maybe Emma's Sauvignon Blanc because it's delicious.
Great. Excellent. Emma, please, same.
So you can find us at saintsupery.com, STSUPERY.com. And that's our same social channel on most channels, not TikTok, but
okay. That's another conversation. Okay.
It is another conversation.
Okay, and what are you drinking right now?
And I'm going to have a little Sauvignon Blanc because it's that kind of day. It's beautiful, it's sunny, and it's springtime. And it's going to be Sauvignon Blanc Day next week, next Friday. May 5th, Sauvignon Blanc Day.
Oh my God, mark your calendar.
Mark your calendar.
Teresa, please tell everybody where we can find everything, all the initiatives, everything that Napa Valley Vintners is working on, please.
Sure. NapaVintners.com. Same with all of our socials, Napa Vintners, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And I'm going to just talk about what I'm drinking these days.
I was going to ask you, but I didn't want you to say a name because it's like picking a child.
No, I can't for sure.
Right.
So I'm just going to go with Chardonnay, and I am finding that I have a renewed interest in Chardonnay, and I am loving all the styles that are coming out of Napa and around the world. And so I'm going to find myself a glass of Chardonnay when we're done.
Excellent. So they all had a skedaddle because there is a huge tasting going on. I'm at the Duck and the Peach once again. Actually, the Duck and the Peach is over here. I am in the gorgeous Wells where I was just joined by these wonderful women who are doing amazing things in the Napa Valley wine industry. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope you learned a lot because I certainly did. Always look at that bottle. Make sure you know where your wine is from. Duh. And if you haven't tried some Napa Valley wines recently, you should really check out what's going on there, especially their dedication to sustainability and taking care of their environment and their employees. It's everything is going to be better when you drink Napa wine. So I thank them for joining me. I thank you for joining me. And I thank the Wells and Hollis Wells Silverman for allowing me to do the show here today. Just a quick reminder, you want to be following me at NYCCINELLIS on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, not TikTok. What else am I on? All of it. I'm on all of it. So you want to check it out. Oh, and of course, you want to subscribe to the show. Industry Night with Nycci Nellis. Thanks to Heartcast Media, we're now on YouTube. So check it out. And hey, always pop me questions. Let me know if you have anything. Of course, anybody that I'm talking to, I can always get a question to them as well. So I thank you for joining me. Be safe out there and have a delicious week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.